A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, it's our great pleasure now to welcome a very special guest. His name is Stuart Robinson, and he's just written a book called Prayer Power. And if ever there was a time in history where the world needs some prayer, I think that time is now. And so I just want to welcome Stu onto the line now. Stu, welcome.
Good to be here again.
Always good to have you. Can I ask you, Stu, why did you write this book?
Well, it's obvious to anyone who does a little bit of research that the church in the West especially is dying. Here in Australia, where 69% of churches are declining, for the first time in history, even nominal Christianity is now a minority affiliation. And this is happening at a time when we have the best educated clergy, the most advanced technology to share our message, and the most state-of-the-art facilities. In the West, the church is sleepwalking into oblivion. However, when I travel in the world and find the church exploding in supernatural growth, there are always the same three fundamentals in operation. And one of them is persistent, persevering, prevailing prayer. An English wit once remarked that the death of the church had often been predicted because it had gone to the dogs. But in every case, it was the dogs that died and the church revived. And those revivals have always been preceded by and dependent upon extraordinary prayer by believers desperate for a visitation of God again. And so this book that I've written is a modest attempt to contribute toward that outcome.
Yeah, I love it. And the title, Prayer Power, why did you choose that title?
Well, the contents of the book, when you read it, is a distillation of my own research and many experiences across decades of ministry around the world. Readers will encounter many events and environments which will surprise and hopefully encourage them in their own pilgrimage to get to know God better, to be used by Him for the blessing of others in their own churches. When the Israelites were about to enter Canaan, God warned them of what might happen when they prospered, and they forgot all about Him. Affluence is usually toxic to spirituality, and in our welfare state, we don't need to depend upon God. The government safety nets supply most of our needs, and this means we may live as practical atheists who remain ignorant of God's power. But in my life, I've often been in hostile situations or in times of extreme need that God, had He not supernaturally intervened, I would not be alive to testify to His real power and provision. And my prayer is that as people read this book, they will hunger for the presence of God and be amazed at what only He can do.
Yeah, I really like that, Stu. And, you know, obviously, like I said in the introduction, if you look around the world, I mean, I was just talking to someone yesterday who was just in the UK with relatives of theirs who are not Christians, they're young people in their 20s, and they're just saying they feel like the world is going mad, that the changes in the UK in government and in lawmaking and in society, non-Christian people are saying it's like the world has gone mad. Have you got any historical analogies or examples where the world was kind of going mad and the people of God prayed and something really wonderful happened to give us all some hope?
Oh, yes. If you read even just the first chapter where I've done a survey of history, you find that, in fact, the world was in a much worse state than even our world is today. And the church was even more despised. The public were hostile against it than we find today. In the case of, in England, where you mentioned, there was a time there where if anyone dared go out on the street and talked about God, they'd be pelted with rotten fruit or stones or driven off the streets. so despised were they. Over in France, of course, at the time of the French Revolution, things were even worse. In America, at the same time, there was the rise of rationalism and atheism, all that sort of stuff. Drunkenness and crime were endemic. People didn't know what to do. But then, in each of these cases, God intervened in incredible ways. I'm not just talking about some local churches growing. I'm talking about incredible international revivals. When you read the history, say, of what happened in the Welsh revival early in the beginning of the 20th century, people would approach the places where the Spirit of God was being poured out, and they would usually come to criticize, to poke fun at them. And as they approached the buildings where believers had gathered to pray, they were thrust to the ground. So great was the power of the Holy Spirit in God's visitation at that time. And when they got up again, they were believers.
Yeah, never the same again. Never the same again. You know, Stu, I could literally talk to you about this all day. I just love hearing these stories, and I love being inspired. I love to pray, as you do as well. We have run out of time today, Stu, but I just want to promote your book again. It's called Prayer Power. Stu, where can people get a hold of your book? How do they find it online?
Okay, well, they could go to my website, which is drstuartrobinson.com. That's DrStuart Robinson, drstuartrobinson.com. And that's my website. They can get it from there. I would dare say they get it from Koorong bookshops as well.
Excellent. So drstuartrobinson.com, or check out Koorong. The book is called Prayer Power. It's to inspire all of us to pray. Stuart, I mean this. I could talk to you for about an hour about this topic, and then I could have a prayer meeting with you. But we've got to go. But Stuart Robinson, I want to thank you so much for joining us on 2020 today.
Okay, good to be with you. Bye now.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.